Hello, how's it going? My name is David Santiago Perez, and I'm doing this video. I'm presenting a case problem that I've been working out throughout the course of language curriculum development. Now, the problem that we're gonna talk is why is it difficult for educators to acknowledge the update of methodological aspects of language curricula? First, we're gonna start talking about the problem itself. Then we're gonna talk about how to solve it, and more importantly, how to solve it from the curricular theory. That is the philosophical assumptions, the curricular development, and the curricular evaluation. All right, let's start. Let's begin with the contextualization. So in the beginning of the course, we had a reading made by Professor Londoño in which he presented us with some of the most common problems educators face and the educating field face in regards to the development of curriculum. Now I chose the topic of educators show that it's difficult for them to make an update because I'm an educator myself and I've had this problem as well. I came up with a theory. Why is it that educators find difficult to update the methodological aspects of language curricula? What are the methodological aspects? What are the methods that you're using and what are the techniques that you're applying into that methodology? Maybe you're using the TPR, maybe you're using the communicative language approach. Those are methodological approaches to language. But how could you update the curriculum based on that methodology? So I have a hypothesis for that. Here's the hypothesis. Educators tend to disregard the update of methodological aspects of language curricula in favor of the preference for a single methodology. This means that if you're an educator and you're doing a curriculum, it is highly possible that you disregard the updated component because you already have a methodology that works and you know that it has not caused any problems in the past. So why would you update the methodological aspects of the curriculum if that works? That is because you already have a preference for a single methodology, and that is my hypothesis. Now let's try to understand that problem more in depth. So, what is the explanation that we have for this problem? We know that teachers have problems updating the methodological components of curricula, but why does that happen? It happens because first, as I stated in my hypothesis, you already have a preference for a methodology. Second of that, your institution already has as well a preference for a methodology. There are schools, universities that impose a methodology in your practice. So updating your curriculum doesn't make much sense. However, when you read about the curricular theory, it makes a lot of sense to update uh, the curriculum based on your students' needs and the trends of the language field that you're working on. I wrote here, language teachers have shown to prefer a single methodology, whether it comes from the imposed methodology of the institution, the one that I was talking about, or the teacher's findings into what works and what doesn't. Maybe he's very into TPR because he's seen in the past that the activities that involve kinesthetic movement improve learning outcomes. So in this example, there are some teachers that prefer the communicative approach, or there are some that prefer the TPR. However, note that those methodologies tend to be quite outdated. The communicative language approach was had its beginnings in the 1970s, and in the 1990s was popularized. Now we're in 2021, so we already have various methodologies that aim at achieving higher components of learning outcomes. The feasibility of the learning outcome can be achieved with newer possibilities that can only happen only when you update the methodological aspects of your curricula. You cannot be doing 20, 30 years, 40 years teaching the same methodology and expecting to have the same results. It's important to change your methodological components because we're advancing in time. And it's the same as in the 1970s, we have some methodologies that worked, but they no longer work because now we have a completely different context. It's gonna be the same forever and ever. So this is why it's important to update the methodological aspects. Now, when does this problem happen? And this problem happens in the moment the educator shows that everything is working fine, so there's no need to change or make an update in his methodology presented in the curriculum. In most cases, the educator does not even know that he has to make an update because, well, look at his perspective. Everything is working, so why would you update your curriculum? So this problem has a root that can be seen in the practice of the lessons. It is not so much at the moment the teacher is designing his curriculum, but it's in the moment he's developing his curriculum. So we've arrived onto a point that is necessary to talk about how can we solve this problem. And I want to talk about this from three perspectives. From the philosophical aspect, the philosophical insight that the teacher has for the curriculum. From the curriculum implementation, the moment, how is he approach the designing implementation of this problem? And finally, how can this curriculum be evaluated so that it can be feasible in the practice, that it works, and that it also shows that it can be updated in time, and so that we can solve this problem from its root. All right, let's start. Concerning philosophical assumptions, approaches and philosophies to the curriculum need to be addressed. What do I mean by that? You need to go and ask your teachers, hey, what do you think about education? What is education for you? What are you teaching? In my case, I'm teaching languages. So, what are languages for you and how can you learn languages? These are very basic philosophical approaches to the curriculum that are going to give an assumption into the design that you're going to put into your curriculum. That means that from the idea that you have this is education, this is language, you already have a based idea on if I have this idea on education where I transmit knowledge to my learners. Let's say I'm a traditionalist. I don't know anything about mediating yet. Let's say I'm a traditionalist. I don't have any need um, to update my curriculum. So right there, we already have another answer to, oh, Now I know why you're not updating your curriculum. It's because you have a mismatching idea about education and curriculum. So it's important that you know what are the underlying philosophies of both education and the subject matter, which is in this case language. Now that you know that your teacher has a preference for a certain philosophy of the subject matter and education, now comes the moment to talk about the curricular implementation. How are you going to design that curriculum? Are you going to take a forward design, meaning that first you're going to select the contents, then you're going to think about the methodology, and then you're going to think about the learning outcomes? This is the forward approach. Or maybe having the idea that you have a problem in regards to the updating of the curriculum, you're going to take a central approach, meaning that first you're going to start with the methodology, and based on that methodology, you're going to come up with the learning outcomes and the selection of content. In this case, I suggest it is very important to take a central approach to the implementation of the curriculum, because the main problem is to change the methodology of your curriculum. And so making a focus that you're gonna think first and foremost about your methodology. After that, you're gonna come up with really good ideas about the selection and content and the learning outcomes. This in return shows uh, great benefits to your learners. This is a learner-centered approach, and it's highly beneficial for your learners. So I highly suggest this as a solution. Concerning the curriculum evaluation. So how can we solve this problem from this perspective? We need to think about that the evaluation moment has the possibility to be addressed from three stages. The beginning, the moment is being practiced, and at the end. My suggestion is to focus on the beginning of the curriculum when you're designing it and it has not been yet put into practice. I suggest as well the use of a particular methodology, the contrastive analysis. What kind of contrastive analysis? Let's say you already have implemented um, your curriculum. Now you need to contrast it with curriculums of the past and see if the methodology has been updated. Has been updated in regards to the update sake because you were required to change your methodology, or have you realized that your learners are now these come from this context and now we are living in this moment of life where this methodology has a particular benefit to the learning outcome. These are two very different ideas. And so for this, we need to have contrastive analysis that makes us realize this from the historical perspective that the institution has had in regards to the curriculum implementation. Now I'm gonna talk about the reflection about the whole process, the case that I've been showing you up until this moment, and how has this program helped me improve my knowledge in the research that I'm trying to do, the research project. Now, let's start talking about the reflection about the whole process. This activity has led me to believe that curriculum implementation needs to follow very sequential steps. The first one and the most important is the philosophical assumptions. We many times disregard this and we don't even take the time to think about what is the ideas that I have on education, what is the ideas that I have on languages. This is extremely important when you're going to design a curriculum. After that, then what is the implementation path that you're going to take for your curriculum? And as well, a final reflection that I have, it's extremely important to not only to update your curriculum based on the trends that the educational moment is showing, but as well that you need to read journals and papers and watch videos on what's going on, what are the interests of your learners, and what are the learners expecting from this particular course in regards to all their dimensions, which is what we're learning in uh, pedagogical mediation. I think that's extremely important to have a more than ideal curriculum. So overall, I will say this activity and phases that we've been doing have been very fruitful, and I appreciate that very much. How the development of this course has contributed to the research process you are conducting. So I'm conducting a research where I talk about the difference of the applications of culture in between experienced teachers and novice teachers. In this sense, from this course, I learned about the philosophical assumptions and how important are them when you are relating them into your practice, being evidenced in your curriculum. So from your philosophical assumptions derive your methodologies. And so since I'm talking about the methodological process of culture, I as well need to talk about what are the philosophical assumptions of those teachers, which is very beneficial in my opinion. It has helped me a lot in regards this research that I'm conducting. Now, this is the end of this presentation. I'm gonna show you the references that I've used. These are the references for this presentation in particular. Well, as I said, this is the end of the presentation. I really appreciate you for taking the time and listening to me. Uh, I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Goodbye.